Here's chapter 10 of the Fundamentals book. Classification of massage movements. Now, this should be review in a way with some extra words thrown in there that you guys don't know of. All right, we're going to talk about forces and soft tissue deformation. So what we're doing is we're deforming the tissue when we work on it in a way. Okay, so what this means is it's the change in the shape of soft tissue, so muscle tissue, connective tissue, as the result of applying an external or internal force on the issues or tissues. All right, so there's internal and external forces. Internal force will be something happening within their body. Does that make sense? We can't internally massage them. Well, we can TMJ release. We'll learn that.
Hey, you know there was a therapist in St. Clairsville that was given internal, and he got prosecuted.
Internal, okay.
Pelvic
Floor massages. Yeah, that is not in our scope of practice.
He was my dad's therapist, and I told my dad, I'm like, you gotta stop using him.
Yeah. Yeah, is your dad okay?
My dad had no idea. I told my dad about it. I'm like, this guy's a creep.
Yeah.
And you need to stop using him as your therapist.
Woo!
It was bad.
Woo!
My dad was mortified, to
Yeah.
say the least. My dad's a runner and all that stuff.
Yeah.
He never dreamed that, thought he knew this guy. But
Well, he's a creep. There's creeps in the field. You got to be careful of them. If you hear of a creep, report them to the state medical board. That's the easiest way to get them out of commission quick.
He's out of commission.
Good, forever.
Yep.
All right, so the internal force we're talking about, muscle tension caused by the force of gravity or something going on inside their body. This would be caused from poor body mechanics or poor posture, and it can cause soft tissue dysfunction and pain. So posture is a big one that causes pain. Now, external forces, that is what we are doing. This is a force that's applied therapeutically. An external force can affect the skin, so very superficial, and deep, deep, deep as well. So it goes from the skin to the soft tissue to the fascia, all the different connective tissue and muscles. It can affect nerves. So if something's getting pushed externally on a nerve, you can have nerve pain. It can affect nerve endings, and it also affects your blood and lymph. Ever wake up and your hand is numb? That's because there was an external force of your body laying on your arm or hands causing the circulation to be lack thereof. That happens to me all night. Also could be a sign of carpal tunnel, by the way. So if that happens to you at night, you can buy these braces that keeps your wrist straight. I have one for my right hand, but who cares about that? Let's move on. Types of external forces. So you guys learned these forces already. So we have something called a compressive force. That is your compression technique. So when you're just pushing down on the person, compression. A tensile force, and we're going to learn this stuff more in detail, would be tension on an area. Twisting forces are called something called torsion. And then we have something called shearing forces. I can't word. And I have a little box here that's orange. Too much intensity may result in excessive deformation. So if you have too much intensity, it can cause injury, bruising, or overstretched or torn fibers. That's why it's not ideal to do as much pressure as you can summon. So we need to educate our people on how that is not going to benefit them. Now then we have the opposite spectrum of too little intensity. This may not initiate a therapeutic result at all. It might relax you a little bit and feel good, but if you don't push hard enough to affect the muscles, you are not going to get a therapeutic effect. So there's not going to be any relief, so to speak. All right, let's dive right in a little bit with compressive forces or compression techniques. So here's a picture of somebody doing compression on the back. She's just applying pressure. These compression techniques may deform the muscle by pressing perpendicularly into the tissue against the bone. So when we're doing compression, we're just squishing the muscle into the bone. It feels great. I would take a whole massage just on compression. It's so good for me. So compression. This can be used as an assessment tool. So you might push on one area and there's some bounce back, or you push on the opposite bilateral, so the other side, and that maybe doesn't have that bounce. So this is a good way to compare sides. So compression can be used as an assessment tool. It's great for enhancing circulation. And depending on the technique used, it can be sedative or stimulating. So a quick move is typically stimulating. Deeper and a slower compression would be more sedating. First, it reduces, let me reread this how I'm supposed to say this. So when you first compress, it reduces the space between the structures. As this is happening, you have a secondary effect happening that opens and expands that tissue. So you push, when you let go, you're now getting blood flow to the area where things are dilating. Now we're talking about something called a tensile or tension force. Tension or elongation forces deform the tissue by pulling the layers apart from one another. So this would be when you're stretching somebody, like a range of motion, like a traction. In the picture here, it's showing someone grabbing someone's head, and they're stabilizing their head with their hand on their forehead. And what they're doing is kind of pulling the head away from the body, adding a little stretch to that joint. So that is called... what did I just say? Traction. Send me home. So this is the opposite of compression. So compression is pushing towards the body, pushing the tissue into the bone. This is creating space between the two. So if we're not doing a joint, also a tension would be maybe grabbing muscle tissue, not bone, and pulling it away from the bone with a jostling technique perhaps. Right, the reason for this is to help elongate any muscle fibers that are shortened. It reduces adhesions, or what we are going to be calling knots. It helps improve your range of motion because those tiny muscles and connective tissue are stretching a little bit. And it can be applied by doing traction, pulling, stretching, or somehow lengthening the tissues. So it's a stretch is what's happening. All right, on the bottom, I have written in like a golden yellow, extreme or sudden tensile force is a common cause for ligament sprains, muscle strains, and nerve injuries. So if we are doing traction or stretching on our clients, we are not doing it abrasive or quickly. We are doing a slow movement so we don't tear things. And this is what happens with whiplash in car accidents or whatever. You're having that quick force, things are stretching, and then you're having strains, sprains, and whatnot. Nerve injuries. Twisting forces are going to be our torsion. Think of your torso. What movement does it do? Flexion, extension, and rotation, right? So think of that as a twisting. So torsion deforms the tissue by compressing and twisting. One end of the structure in one direction and the other in the opposite. So think of you wringing out a towel. So any of our wringing motions would be doing this. Kneading and wringing motions would be involved with torsion forces. This helps break up knots, adhesions. It enhances local circulation and it makes the tissue more pliable. So as it warms up when you're doing this, it's kind of like, think of clay. When you start working with clay, it's hard as a rock almost. And then as it gets stretched and warmed up, you start being able to mold it easier. Do I need to bring clay in so we can play?
That'd be fun.
Play with clay. Shearing forces.
Did you remember to hit record?
Sure did. Thank you. Shearing forces are your friction. So shearing means it deforms the tissue by shifting different structures against each other or pulling them apart adjacent sections or pulling apart adjacent sections of the structure in the opposite direction. So in this case, this is friction. So if we're kind of, we're pushing this way and it's kind of adding a stretch behind us. Does that make any sense? Right? So friction, or even going back and forth, it's moving that back and forth. There's a different ways to do friction. Friction generally will produce heat and create a therapeutic inflammatory process. So when you're cold and you go like this, that's friction and you feel the warmth right away. It's creating a therapeutic inflammatory response. The tissue warms up to make it more pliable. This can reduce adhesions and reorganize the collagen and the fiber alignment. So the massage can actually, maybe your fibers are all tight and going to one side. It can kind of even them out and get them back in the direction they are going, like brushing your knotted hair. So the brush is our friction of our hand. All right, so you had your 7 common massage methods. These are the same thing, but with different names. So it's all the same. Remember the effleurage, petrissage, all of that. So this is just a different version of that, okay? So static, gliding, torsion, shearing, oscillating, percussion, joint movement. Now typically we're not using these terms, we're using the Swedish terms. But this just, like I said, dives in a little bit deeper. Plus there's some repetition with some of these classes. It'll help you learn. So remember, your static methods would be your superficial touch, deep touch, and holding. So that static means you're not moving it, right? Techniques include stationary touch, ischemic compression, trigger points, gliding methods such as muscle energy techniques. You're like, what's that? We'll learn a little more when we learn about modalities. So the applications used would be, you could use fingertips, your entire hand, thumb, a braced thumb. Remember, braced thumb is when you have something keeping it steady. So in this case, my braced thumb is, can you see that? Using my finger to keep it straight, or you might want to brace a thumb with the thumb on top. You can use braced thumb, forearm, and elbow. Most of these applications are going to literally be anywhere from your elbow down. So these are going to be really, really repetitive. Gliding. This is your effleurage. I just stroked out. So this is the most frequently used massage technique for Swedish or Western massage. So some of the gliding methods, I have subgroups over here, is your aura stroking. Remember, I kind of went over that, where you're not touching them. You're above in their aura space. This is energy working. Your feather stroking, which is very light. Your superficial gliding. Then your deep gliding would be more of the deeper tissue type glides. These techniques introduce touch and gather information. So this is how we gather information on what we're feeling. This is how we spread lubricant evenly. I hope this is mostly knowledge you guys know, right? It is a smooth, continuous glide that does not lose contact with the client's skin. So you're not going down a stroke, lifting your hands up, and then doing this, all right? You're stroking and then going back up, or whatever motion you're doing on whatever body part. Again, fingertips, using your palm. We can throw in a soft fist here if you want. You can do gliding with soft fists. You can glide with the forearm without it being too deep if you're not using a lot of weight. Torsion. This is your kneading or your petrissage. So you are manipulating and moving the muscle away from said bony landmarks, right? And bones underneath. So this is your kneading, your folding, your skin rolling, your wringing. These techniques loosen your muscle, reduces muscle atrophy, so it helps reintroduce blood and oxygen and nutrients to a muscle that is losing strength, right? It enhances local circulation and makes tissue more pliable. But remember, when you're doing skin rolling, it's really hard to get the skin to get into the rolling position if it's lubricated. So you want to do skin rolling non-lubricated. But honestly, people usually don't do this. If they do, it's on the back, and it's like a myofascial release that we will learn later too. Application, typically both hands or fingers are used. I also will knead with my knuckles. I will use my elbow. Whatever you got, throw it at them. If you have Ashiatsu skills, you're going to be jumping up on the table using your feet. So cool. All right, shearing methods. This would be, and some of them kind of roll into different categories too, your superficial friction and your deep friction. Your deep friction would include circular, so that's when you're doing a circular motion, right? Cross fiber friction, when you're going against the grain. This is used primarily for scar tissue. I also use cross fiber friction along the spine. When we learn about the spine muscles, I'll show you what I'm talking about. They call them erectors. And your longitudinal friction, let's see where we at. It also includes rolling, chucking, and compression. So all these are considered a shearing method, and they might be in another category too. So when you're doing real friction, it's little to no lubrication, right? This causes something called hyperemia, so reddening of the skin. You're getting circulation. This stretches and broadens the tissue, breaks down connective tissue adhesions. It promotes more pliable scar tissue and has a mild therapeutic inflammatory process. So a lot of our techniques are effleurage, petrissage, and shearing, right? So the applications are palm, hand, fingertips for cross fiber friction. You can also do deep longitudinal friction with your elbow, like up the IT band, which is the side of your leg. That hurts like a son of a gun. Our oscillating motions. So think of like a fan that oscillates, so it's something that's kind of moving along an axis, right? So these would be your shaking, your jostling, your rocking, your vibrations are all in the oscillating methods category. So these increase the circulation and relax the muscles. So initially, these tend to have kind of a stimulating effect a lot of times, right? If you shake something, you're like, woo! But some of them, when applied precisely, can also calm things down as well. It can be used to assess tissue or restrictions. So I do a lot of shaking as I'm doing the limbs of the body just to see what they're, I wouldn't say it's not technically like a range of motion, but I want to see how that joint moves just by shaking it and letting it do its natural relaxing motion. And I'll show you guys this because we're going to learn some stretches with the shoulder since we're a little behind on hands-on. Where am I at? So applications of this would technically be hands and soft knuckles a lot of the times. Getting through this quick. Remember tapotement? They still have this under percussion, thank God. So that's your tapping, your cupping, your slapping, your hacking, your beating. These techniques are either simultaneous or alternating. So you can go together or you can alternate. This tones and stimulates the tissue. It's often very stimulating. It's good to do at the end of the massage to wake them up, or good for chair massage. Has an anesthetic effect temporarily on the nerves. So that's cool. It increases circulation and it breaks up lung congestion, the cupping part. Applications are your fingertips for the tapping. Cupping is your cupped palm or fingers, ulnar side of your hand, or your soft fist, depending on which technique you're doing. Now, joint movements, again, we're talking passive joint and active. Remember, passive means your client is just, we'll say, passed out on the table, not helping. So, passive, not helping. Active, they are actively assisting while you move them. So, there's active assistant and active resistance. And I kind of went over that a little bit, but we'll dive in the future more. So, joint movements are used to improve joint mobility and range of motion. It can be done before and after or during the treatment, so you can note any new changes. So remember, passive means they're just laying there, right? Active is when you're moving them and they're helping. So active assistant means they are helping with you. So if you are, we'll say, flexing the elbow, they are also flexing the elbow while you're helping them. So this would be good for people maybe post-surgical or an injury where they don't have that full range or the strength to do that. So you can assist. Resistance is they're doing the opposite. I am flexing them and they're pushing into extension. So there's a reason behind active resistance, and that's to tire out the muscle that's being contracted so it relaxes. And that's kind of what a TENS unit does. A TENS unit, it's a sticky pad. You stick them on. You turn up the jolt on it, and it will send an impulse, electrical impulse to that muscle to have some of the fibers contract to the point where they relax and tire out. So that's the whole reasoning behind that and active release. Or active, it is called active release, but active resistance in this case. Some barriers. So there are going to be barriers that resist range of motion. You have your anatomical barrier, physiological barrier, and your pathogenic barrier. So break down the words if you're not sure and just kind of think about what they're saying. Anatomic barrier would be a physical structure of the joint, your anatomy, right? So moving beyond the anatomic barrier can result in tissue damage. So our bony guy over here can only go so far before that joint no longer moves. So that's your anatomic barrier. Your physiological barrier is joint movement at restriction before reaching the anatomic barrier. So this is typically from a pulled muscle reaching the extent of their stretch, or a very tight muscle that doesn't have its full range of motion because it's too tight. So you have a physiological issue that's causing that range of motion to not be at its full angle, I guess I should say. Pathogenic. It's similar, so this is where there's some confusion. It's similar to the physiological barrier, but it occurs either before the normal end of range of motion and is often accompanied with pain. So this is also caused by the tense muscle or scar tissue or inflammation. So this is lack of range of motion. Think of like a pathogenic, disease causing. So something that's causing you to not have your full range of motion, not just because of a physiological barrier. So this could be intense inflammation at the joint that's causing pain, that's also causing the muscle to tense up, right? Now, when you do range of motion, there is a lovely word called end feel. The change in the quality of the feeling as the end of movement is achieved. So that's what it means. So as we are doing range of motion, we're going to try to feel for something called end feel when there's a stop, right? Or when the client says that hurts. Typically, you'll be able to tell just by how the body is reacting. Like most of us have super tight hamstrings. And if I were to try to touch my feet while standing up, that's really funny. what you can do as a therapist is force me into it, but you want to actually get the real client's end feel. So where they start feeling discomfort, typically. Not pain, but a slight stretch. So you have hard, soft, and empty end feel. Hard end feel is bone against bone feeling. So this is feeling a gradual tightening in the last few inches of your range of motion. So that's okay. You can kind of start feeling where the bone, think bone, hard, bones are hard. That's the hard end feel, is when it's bone on bone. Think of like, this is as far as my elbow go, or as my forearm goes when I flex, and that would be my end feel. This is the end, okay? Soft end feel would be cushioned limitation in which soft tissue prevents the movement. I put knee extension as an example. If you have a knee surgery, you can't straighten your leg right away because the muscles are all tight when they bind it. But another good example for the soft end feel is, think of a big muscle man that no longer has their range of motion. They might not be able to do this and touch their deltoid. And they might be all the way up here because their bicep, their soft tissue, soft end feel, is blocking the bone from touching the bone. Your husband?
He can't even put his arms fully down because of how large his lats and shit are. It's fucking stupid.
And that's probably causing a lot of his problems,
Yeah,
too.
no, I know.
Because he probably doesn't stretch.
He does.
He does? Good
Well,
boy.
He started like 4 months ago. So it was-
When did he start weightlifting? More than 4 months ago?
when he joined the Navy. So.
How many years? Wait, 7? It's 7?
is when he got out.
Okay.
And got the 100% disabled.
We talked
But,
earlier. I'm like, why is everything 7 today? I'm
uh,
playing the
Dude,
lottery.
I think it's been like. How fucking old is he? Jesus. It's like 12 years.
12 years
Since he started lifting.
of lifting and only stretching
4
for
months.
a quarter of it.
4 months of stretching.
4 months of stretch.
Or a third of it, sorry.
Yeah,
Can't
yeah.
math.
Yeah.
Woo!
He's got a lot of
Make sure you stretch, friends, on the internet. Okay. Empty end feel is an abrupt restriction to a joint caused by pain. So, in this instance, say I hurt myself and rolled your ankle. Say you rolled your ankle and someone tries to bend it way before it like would cause pain on a normal person, and you're like, ah! So that would be your empty end feel. Just think empty as in there's no range of motion. You know, your cup is kind of empty. Stupid example, but empty. Pain. Pain. So hard and soft end feels without pain indicate healthy tissue. Remember that. Soft and hard end feels with no pain mean it's healthy. You don't want pain when you're bending a joint. Typically, there's a dysfunction there. All right, the effects of joint movement. So joint movement provides relaxation of related muscles. So that's why it's really important to stretch your clients, as long as they're okay with it. During the massage, a lot of times I will do the manual therapy, the work on the muscles, and then do a stretch, because now it's warmed up and I'll get a bigger, better stretch, and also just kind of redirects those fibers. Joint movement will warm and lubricate the articulation. I put articulation surfaces. I meant articulating surfaces. So that joint, now that it's moving, is a little more fluid. It's warmed up. Kind of how you're supposed to stretch and stuff before you work out or do a sport. That's kind of what they're doing. When they're doing shoulder rolls and stuff like that, you're warming up the joints. It stimulates production of synovial fluid so that you do have better movement. It introduces limbs to the possibility of new and improved movement. So your body can change. So the more you stretch, your body adapts, and then that's your new range of motion, right? Where am I at? So stretch fascia. It stretches the fascia and the associated muscles so that you don't go back to being all tight and bound. Joint movement will help flex, stretch, and warm your tendons and your ligaments so that everything's more pliable. If your tendons are more pliable, the muscle that it's attached to is going to have a little more of a relaxed state. Joint movement helps maintain and increase flexibility and range of motion. That is a given. And also stimulates the fluid movement by creating a pumping action for blood and lymph. That's why it is really important for somebody who's sedentary to get up and start moving so that your blood and your lymph start circulating. You notice a lot of people who sit a lot, or maybe even older, the older generation, from sitting, they start getting fluid buildup or circulatory issues in their legs because all they're doing is sitting on their booty. And they're old and retired and they don't care, but it's causing health problems. So it's important to teach them to get up and move. If they can't actually walk and they can still move their joints, exercise bands might be good. If they're not already seeing a physical therapist and having in-home PT, you might want to help anybody you care about and help them along with showing them some stretches that they could do. All right, there's that. I'm always bad at the goodbye. Ta-ta for now.
Carry it over for your loved ones that can't get out of their chair.
Yeah.